The cowboy had not planned to come home alive, and that truth rode with him across the desert like a second shadow, stretching long in the sunset as his horse slowed near the edge of the old land that no longer felt like his, the wind carrying dust and the smell of sage, every breath tasting like memory and regret. Because once upon a time this place had been full of laughter and firelight and the sound of her voice, and now it was only silence, the kind that grows heavy enough to press against your chest until breathing becomes a choice instead of a reflex. And when he finally dismounted near the abandoned cabin that once belonged to his grandfather, he felt the same emptiness inside himself as the emptiness in the windows and the doorframe that hung crooked on rusted hinges, the boards bleached by sun and time, the world whispering that nothing waits for broken men. Yet something inside him, stubborn and aching, pushed him forward anyway, and when he opened the door expecting dust and darkness, he found instead a woman sitting on the floor near the window, wrapped only in an old blanket, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders like spilled ink, her eyes hollow yet burning with something that had not gone out yet. And in that moment time bent backward, because he knew her even though he hadn't seen her in years, knew the shape of her grief the way you know the shape of a scar on your own body, and he whispered her name like a prayer he no longer believed in, and she looked up slowly as if lifting her gaze was the hardest thing in the world. And when their eyes met, something ancient and fragile stirred between them. Not love, not hope, but recognition, the recognition of two souls who had been standing too long on the edge of the same cliff, waiting for the courage to fall. And she told him in a voice like dry leaves that she had nowhere left to go, that the world had taken everything from her, that even her reason to keep breathing felt borrowed now. And he listened, not trying to fix her, not offering lies shaped like comfort, just listening, because sometimes the only thing that can keep a person alive is being seen by someone who understands the weight they are carrying. And as night fell and the wind howled through the cracks in the cabin walls, they sat there in silence, two broken people warming each other not with fire or touch but with presence. And for the first time in a very long time, the cowboy did not feel completely alone in his decision to stay or leave this world. And somewhere deep inside him, a question formed, and not why should I live, but what if staying is not the same as suffering? And as the stars rose over the desert and the coyotes cried far away, the answer did not come, but neither did the end, and that was something. And sometimes something is enough to keep a heart beating for one more night. Morning did not arrive like a gift, but like a quiet agreement between light and darkness. And when the sun crept through the dirty window panes and touched her face, the woman stirred, and he saw that sleep had not healed her but softened her just enough that the sharpest edges of despair were no longer cutting her open from the inside. And they shared stale bread and water without speaking much, because words were still too heavy. And when she finally spoke, she told him her story not as a confession, but as a release, how she had lost her family, her home, her sense of belonging, how the world had taught her again and again that survival does not mean living, and how loneliness can feel louder than grief. And he told her his too, of wars that did not end when the fighting stopped, of ghosts that rode beside him even when the road was empty, of a future he no longer trusted himself to imagine. And something shifted between them then. Not romance, not salvation, but a fragile understanding that pain does not demand isolation, that suffering shared does not double but divides. And as they walked outside together, the desert looked different. Not kinder, not softer, but honest. And honesty is sometimes more bearable than hope. And when she said she didn't think she could keep going much longer, he did not argue. He did not shame her. He only said, "Stay today," and she stayed. And when the day became evening, he said, "Stay tonight," and she stayed. And the miracle was not that she chose life, but that she postponed death. Because postponement is often the first form of courage. And as they talked and walked and sat and listened, the hours stacked themselves into something that almost looked like a future. Not bright, not certain, but present. And presence is the soil where healing sometimes dares to grow. And when she laughed once, just once, at something small and stupid, he said about a crooked fence post, the sound startled them both, like a bird suddenly flying from a dead tree. And they looked at each other in disbelief, not because laughter had returned, but because it had not been erased completely, and that meant the world had not finished with them yet. And as the fire burned low and the stars returned, The cowboy realized he no longer wanted to disappear, not because life was suddenly beautiful, but because she was still here, and as long as one soul still sees another, the world has not lost its last reason. The days that followed were not miraculous. They were quiet, slow, sometimes heavy, sometimes gentle. And that was enough because healing does not arrive like thunder. It arrives like rain you do not notice until the ground is no longer cracked. And she began to walk a little farther each day, to speak a little more, to sleep a little deeper. And he began to imagine a tomorrow that did not end in silence. And when she told him she still felt broken, he told her that broken things are not useless. They are just honest, and when he told her he still felt empty, she told him emptiness is space, and space is where something new can exist. And they were not saving each other. They were simply refusing to abandon each other. And that refusal changed everything. And one morning as the sun rose gold over the desert, she said she wanted to live. Not forever, not fearlessly, just one day at a time. And he smiled not because the world was fixed, but because it was still possible, and possibility is a powerful thing. And when they stood together watching the horizon, two silhouettes against an endless sky, the cowboy realized that coming home had not been about finding a place. It had been about finding a person who made staying feel less like a punishment and more like a choice. And she realized that having no reason left to live had been a lie. Grief told her when she was too tired to argue. And as the wind moved through the grass and the world kept turning as it always does, they turned with it. Not healed, not perfect, but alive. And sometimes that is the greatest victory a human heart can achieve.